This is the Horror Movie Show on hmpod.com, hosted by Jerry and Mark, your one-stop shop for all horrible movie reviews. From the latest blockbusters and independent films to classics, let Mark and Jerry convince you the world is a dangerous place, though often good for a laugh. Now come and listen to the Horror Movie Show, if you dare.
Hey there, folks. Jerry here.
And Mark.
Bringing you the latest episode of the Horror Movie Show on hmpod.com and the Crypt and iTunes and all over the place. How are you folks doing?
Come on, tell us.
Speak up.
We want to see some feedback.
Last week I was telling you about the English series In the Flesh. I wanted to talk about a different series, also about zombies. And this is one of the ones that was recommended by Andy, also known as Retro Asylum over in Britain. It's a 2008 miniseries. Jeez, I've watched the whole thing. I think it was 4 episodes. It's called Dead Set. And the idea is that it's like the Big Brother TV show, reality series.
Right.
But a zombie uprising happens outside of the house. And it's like the house is one of the few safe places left. So you have like zombies running around the TV studio that's attached to the house, but inside the house. And of course they've only got so much food and water and stuff like that.
Is this funny?
Well, it has, it does. It has its funny moments because one woman who's just been kicked out of the house, she's the losing candidate that week, and she's unbelievably obnoxious, and she hasn't left the television studio part of the studio, so she's behind the scenes while, there's still like 3 or 4 people left in the house.
Right.
But she's locked in a studio with the producer of the show, who is the most vile, evil producer that television has ever seen, which I'm sure is saying a lot. And this guy, he's such a pig that he gets drunk the first night that they're locked away and they can't leave because there's maniac zombies will kill them if they step outside. He gets drunk, and of course he wakes up the next morning being a fat slob of a guy, and there's no bathroom facilities. So he takes a great, horrible, runny dump in a trash can. And it's like the girl stuck with him would rather face the zombies because he's more horrible than the zombies. And so a real, rather heavy-handed and disgusting comedy, but it is funny. I really enjoyed it. It's not as good as In the Flesh, the series that just wrapped up, and we'll talk about that when Mark is caught up. But still worth seeing, and I appreciate the heads up. I'll also mention one other thing, and this one is called Ghost Watch, and it's on YouTube, so practically anybody could see it. It's like a made-for-TV movie. It was announced beforehand that it was going to be entirely fiction, this episode. But like the H.G. Wells War of the Worlds done by Orson Welles on the radio, where people tuned in partway through and thought it was true.
Oh, yeah?
People believed that this Ghost Watch show was true because they used real English television presenters in it. And it appears to be like they got a newscaster hosting this show at the anchor desk.
Yeah.
And he's got these, fake experts, and they've got real correspondents in this haunted house and stuff with a family. And the idea is that they're going to present what happens in real time in this house, and we may see some haunted stuff.
Right.
Well, lots happens in the house. And I just thought it was a very funny idea, and it's really interesting to read after the fact how upset this got people. This is 1992, and people thought that what they were watching was real evidence of the supernatural, and they were so upset when they learned after the show was over that the whole thing was just a show. I think that's so funny because human beings are so desperate to want to believe that they were believing this. It is so stupid. Well acted, a little slow I found here and there, but that's more the pacing that you have on a live TV show.
Right.
And that's what this is mimicking. Even though it isn't live, it was not done live.
Right.
It's made to appear to be live, so it seemed a little stilted, a little slow. But the fun thing is when one of the experts, they have like a believer in the studio, a psychic researcher, and she's a total believer. And they have another guy who's playing a scientist who's a skeptic. And the believer, the roles are reversed, this being a fictional newscast. The roles are reversed, and everything reasonable that the skeptic says, this woman has an answer and says, oh, your mind is so closed off, you just believe this rubbish, because that's what suits you to believe. Well, wait a second, she's the one believing the rubbish.
Yeah.
That would be in a real newscast, but in this, the roles are reversed, and it's done very cleverly.
Well, that's a lot like talking to somebody who's very religious.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they'll sit there and quote all these things all over the place, but you'll look at what they're quoting, and
it just adds up to
it just
crazy.
adds up. Yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of people do that.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people we know and even related to. So that's Ghost Watch 1992, and the other is called Dead Set. Again, if you're looking for a zombie fix, Dead Set 2008 is worth checking out. So that was it. I just wanted to give a mention of that. I'm quite enjoying these English TV series. So, new movies. The Sacrament, written and directed by Ty West. It stars A.J. Bowen as Sam, and Joe Swanberg as Jake. They were both excellent in one of last year's best horror movies, You're Next. Amy Seimetz is in it, and Gene Jones, who plays Father. And this whole movie is very much, it's a found footage movie along the lines of a couple of journalists going into the Jonestown
massacre.
Yeah, before the massacre, they're in the compound down in Guyana, and they're just observing what goes on, and then they decide, the authorities are going to come and everybody has to die. It's very like Jonestown.
Well,
and I thought it was a tremendous movie. I really enjoyed it. What did you think?
Very realistic.
Mm-hmm. Was it entertaining?
I think the characters were really well represented.
Mm-hmm.
The leader of the cult, Father character.
He's scary.
He just had an answer for everything. And then he wouldn't answer your question, but instead make you believe his answers were better than your questions.
Well, speaking of religious nuts, and the funny thing is that you don't really get any specifics as to what it is that their purpose is. What is his purpose of gathering all these sort of lost semi-Christian types and taking them out of the country, and he's taken their money. They've donated everything. They've sold everything and given it to the church or whatever you'd call this, the family. I can't remember what they call themselves. But ultimately, a lot of the people who are there start saying quietly to the guys with the cameras, we want to get out. We want to get out, but we're scared. We don't know what to do.
I thought it was...
Take my child and take her with you.
The first half of this movie is this guy has a sister that's in this cult.
Yes.
And they don't know it's a cult.
That's right. Although they're suspicious. They think something funny is going on.
So he gets a letter from his sister saying, please come and visit us at the compound.
Right.
We are no longer in the U.S. You have to take a plane there, and we'll send you information on how to get here.
Yeah.
So he's wondering what's going on with his sister because he's concerned.
Yeah. He says that does not sound like
Yeah, and he happens to have this friend that have a show that exposes or tries to document the truth about almost anything.
Yeah, anything.
Any topical thing. They want to get to the roots of the matter and give an unbiased opinion.
Mm.
So his friend hears about his trip to wherever he's going. He says, this sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Mind if we tag along, me and a cameraman.
Him and his sound guy.
Cameraman.
Yeah.
So the guy says, sure, come on along. So they go to this compound, and they are helicoptered in. Mm-hmm. And right away, the first thing that they notice is that they have these guys with machine guns, or guns, guarding the place. Now, we're never really told exactly where this compound is. We assume it's somewhere in Africa.
Oh, I was thinking South America.
Really?
Yeah, like Guyana and Jonestown.
Yeah, because I thought it was Africa, but it could have been South America. But it's someplace where...
You may just be thinking because there's a lot of black people there, but they're American. Like the compound is in the middle of a jungle somewhere. So it could have been the Congo. It could have been in the middle of the jungle.
And they are self-contained, yes. And so they have...
In fact, the helicopter pilot who is separate, he's Latino.
So they end up at this compound, and they have a little bit of kerfuffle trying to get into the compound, but they finally get in, and they are brought to a thing that they were going to be able to stay in, a little house.
A cabin?
A cabin, yeah.
A little wooden thing they were going to stay in, yeah.
There's no insulation on this cabin. You can see the sunlight coming through the slats.
But it's warm enough. You don't need anything
So
much.
It's obviously a warm climate.
Yeah.
And they see people doing their gardening. They see people walking along the path.
It looks quite idyllic. It looks like a little alternate society that Father has set up, which is what it is. We just happen to be there when Father goes ballistic.
What I was trying to get to, the first half of this movie, it shows them getting there. It shows them interviewing some of the people, the cameraman and the documentarian. And they actually go to this festivity that's happening at night. This all happens in one day. Mm-hmm. They go to the festivities, but they also get an interview, which the whole camp is there.
Everybody.
He didn't expect that. And the interview goes kind of a little bit awkward to the point where the guy...
He's completely manipulated.
Yeah, he's completely manipulated. He didn't know if it went well or not. Yeah. And the cameraman's saying, no, this is good, this is good. Yeah. And at that point, they go back to their cabin and they said, well, what do you think? And they ask each other what they think. And they said, well, it looks like it's all on the up and up. Everything looks good. These people seem to be happy. And then this little girl shows up at their door, and she hands them a piece of paper and goes away.
Help us.
And that's what it says, is help us.
Things rapidly go south from there.
Yeah.
And this, as they say, is where the plot thickens.
Yeah, and then everything goes nuts. Mm-hmm. It's mostly running around trying to survive at that point.
Okay, let's not give anything else away, but really good movie. I would have to say that this is the best horror movie I've seen this year. I just thought the acting was top-notch from everybody, start to finish. The dialogue is very realistic. The guy playing Father, Gene Jones, the only thing that I've seen him in that I know I've seen him in, he's the poor little gas station shop attendant in No Country for Old Men.
Oh.
Friendo, who gets the coin toss to decide whether he lives or dies. Yeah. He really does a good job.
Yeah.
He's like a monstrous great toad, big fat man, but he's so sure of himself. He's so positive that he is right and everything should be the way he said.
Yes, he's very good at manipulating what people say to his advantage. Mm-hmm. Just asking a simple question, he'll say, well, this is what you really mean. You're really attacking me. That's the general
typical way of handling us, trying to handle me, and I won't be handled. And,
yeah. It's just lovely the way he does it, and he's so good at it.
Yes, and everybody is good. As I say, Joe Swanberg and A.J. Bowen were both in You're Next. Joe Swanberg was the tall brother who gets the arrow in his back, I think, early on. Mm-hmm. And A.J. Bowen was the brother with the shady girlfriend.
Okay.
Yeah. So, what can I say?
The thing about this movie is it rings too true.
Yeah, I know.
It's scary because it really does look like found footage.
Yeah, it does.
And to me, I've watched so much found footage stuff these days that I just didn't want to see another one.
I know. Yeah.
So I didn't want to really like this movie because I'm going, oh my God, not another one. But it is
At
really
least
well.
It has a reason.
Yes.
Because what we're watching is the documentary footage from two cameras.
Yeah.
One of them being a cell phone.
No, one of them...
Oh, no, it's a still camera, but it takes video.
like a Canon.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to another independent movie called The Upper Footage, also known simply as Upper, directed by Justin Cole. Now, on IMDb, no cast is given for this because the claim by the filmmaker is that this is more found footage, real footage of some overprivileged Manhattan spoiled little punks who've got more money and time than anybody should have. One of them picks up a pretty girl at a nightclub. They take her back to the one guy's penthouse apartment, load her up with coke and drugs, and she dies, and it's what they then do to protect their asses. And you have a couple of them who want to cover it up entirely, and you have a couple of them, one of them being a woman, who are hysterical and just want to go to the authorities.
Right.
So they have to be manipulated as well. And I found it a very entertaining movie. I thought it was slow to get going. It takes about an hour before the action really sets in.
Well, it's only an hour and a half movie.
I know. So the setup is very long, and I'd even say too long, but I didn't like the payoff. I thought it was worth watching.
Well, to me, I just couldn't feel anything for these people.
No, they're all horrible.
They're all horrible.
They're all supposed to be horrible.
And the footage, now, I don't know if this is true, but they give you a little preamble to this movie and with words spelt across the screen saying, at first they tried to use this footage to blackmail the families on YouTube and that were taken down. Yeah. And then they were talking about Quentin Tarantino getting a hold of it and trying to...
He was going to make a movie out of it.
Yeah, and the legal hassles of that. And they still say, this is real stuff. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if it's real or what. No. It isn't?
Absolutely.
Because they keep saying it's edited down from 393 minutes of real footage.
Yeah.
Now...
I don't know what the hell you get. 400 minutes of footage. I mean, it's just not that interesting.
Yeah. They had big chunks of non-interesting stuff in this movie.
Yeah.
So most of it must have been, in a bag somewhere.
Okay, first off, there isn't 400 minutes.
Yeah, well...
It's only what they needed to shoot.
Anyway...
They're saying there's 400 minutes
I just found it boring as hell.
Did you? You did make it to the end, right?
Oh, yeah, I made it to the end. And I just felt, if it was real...
There's no point watching it if it isn't an actual torture murder.
Yeah. To me, I just couldn't be bothered with this movie unless I was forced to watch it, which I was.
Right.
I just didn't like it at all. It's half of it, 3/4 of it is blurry.
Right.
And in bad angles, you can't see what's happening. Yeah. Everything's happening off camera.
Yeah, this is really one of the worst found footage movies I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
They can be so painful when they're badly done, and this one is badly done.
Half the dialogue is, shut up, F you, and all this stuff and that's half the dialogue. Right. I'm sorry. I don't need to hear a bunch of snotty little kids swearing at each other and saying, grow up! Why are you being like that?
Yeah.
Oh, why? How can you be...
and that blonde girl screaming hysterically,
and how can you be...
and crying, it's horrible.
Totally weeping halfway through it. She didn't stop weeping.
No, for half the movie.
And then, it shows them driving down a street and going around the corner and
going for junk food.
And then 10 minutes of digging this grave. Yeah, just digging.
Yeah.
To the point where they're showing these guys digging. The guys in the car taking the video, you can see the windshield fogging up because they're there that long. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is boring.
Okay, well, I liked it more than Mark did, but those are all valid points. There was a lot that could have been done to speed it up.
It could have been done.
However, I did think that the payoff was good, and that just the subject matter, these privileged little pukes simply not acting like decent human beings. There's the future, folks. There's the 1%. That's really, it's an attack on the rich, is what this movie is. Didn't grab Mark, that's for
sure.
No,
and the way they were trying to push it as real.
Mm-hmm.
If it isn't, then to me it's just silly. It's just the silliest thing. And plus the fact is, like I said, I mean, you said it yourself. This is one of the worst handheld camera or found footage. If it's going to be fake, make it at least decently fake.
Well, that's it. You can compare Sacrament and upper footage.
Yeah.
They're both found footage. Just from the footage point of view, one works and one doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Okay, let's move on to a professionally made movie. The Quiet Ones, an English movie from 2014, directed by John Pogue, written by Craig Rosenberg and Oren Moverman. I like that name, Oren Moverman. Stars Olivia Cook as Jane Harper, the subject of the experiment. Jared Harris as the erstwhile boss, Professor Joseph Copeland. Sam Claflin as Brian McNeil. The lovely Erin Richards as Chrissy Dalton. And Rory Fleck-Byrne as Harry Abrams.
Again, this claims to be based on a true story.
Yes, it does. It does.
It's like half the movies we watched lately are claimed to be based on real events.
Yeah, it becomes more interesting and scarier when they say, we made this up. Because that's so unusual. Really? Imagination? An original story? There's something we don't see too often. So the idea here is that the professor, Jared Harris's character, Professor Copeland, he has found himself a young woman who seems to be haunted, seems to have the ability at times to
communicate,
sort of focus. Now, his theory is that people who act like this, people who are the focus for poltergeists and so on, that this is psychic energy, it's mental energy that is being produced, channeled somehow outside of their minds. But he doesn't believe in the supernatural.
He wants to scientifically prove that people have the ability to create things with their minds that can manifest outside of the body.
So ectoplasm would be an actual physical manifestation, not a ghostly manifestation.
Right. Because he doesn't believe in demons.
Right.
He doesn't believe in the cult.
No, he doesn't believe in ghosts.
So he believes that whatever happens is coming from this person, and he is confident that he can cure them.
Yes. That's right. You just have to get it out of them, and then you can stamp its head in and set them free.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the girl in question, Olivia Cook, playing Jane Harper, she does a terrific job. The way she manipulates the young man who comes in just to document it. Again, more found footage here. Although this is not a found footage movie.
No.
It has some elements of that
they are
documenting.
Much like the movie we did last week, Oculus. They're documenting an event.
Right. But it's a straight-up movie.
Well, no, but
some of that.
They do flip back and forth between the footage and outside the footage.
Yeah. Even though it's video, it is point of view of someone going on that time. Yeah.
So when the film is being played, you have a smaller screen than when you have the full
reality. I liked it overall. I thought Olivia Cook was the real strong point in this as the haunted girl. She's able to be very sympathetic and very sweet, and at the same time she can sort of flip a switch and become quite monstrous or very seductive.
Right.
The very first time that the young cameraman meets her, she just wraps him around her little finger, and the last thing she does before he leaves her little lock-up room, she gives him a little knowing grin where he knows he's been played. And it may as well be a devil playing him. And all the things that are manifested manage to convince everybody except the stubborn professor that there is something really scary going on here. But the professor, of course, this is his career. He's even kicked out of Cambridge, I think?
Oxford or something.
Yeah, one of the big...
I think they're at Oxford, and he has a grant for this experiment that he wants to do on this in the woman. Yeah. And when they find out what they're doing to her, they cancel his grants, kick him off campus, and he ends up going to an old house that he
rents out.
I think he used it before in some of the footage of the little boy. I think that's the same house they had the little boy in.
Could be. Yeah, well, we don't want to give anything away, but the professor has his own... We discover that the professor has his own reasons for wanting to not believe in supernatural.
Yes.
He has personal reasons. Of course he does. So that's one of the things we're waiting to discover. What is driving the professor?
There are 5 characters in this movie, major characters, and that's the professor. He has 3 students with him. Well, two students and one cameraman.
Right.
And the 2 students are a girl and a boy. And the girl, each one of the relationships they have, it's all this intertwining sexual things happening within the group.
Yeah.
So I found that really interesting in this movie, in that every single person, their motives are different.
The cameraman is the only, and of course that's who we identify with. The cameraman is the only outsider.
The only true person
the only honest person.
Yeah, the honest person that really wants to help this girl.
Yeah. What he sees
because he's in love with her.
He does fall for her early on, but I also just think he's more decent than the rest of them and doesn't have an agenda.
And he also is willing to probe the idea that there is an occult. This isn't manifested by her, that something is channeling through her.
Right.
And of course the professor is something he does not want to hear.
No.
He wants to totally reject that, and when he puts that forward, he wants to stomp on that idea so bad.
Yeah, and it's funny because Quiet Ones reminded me a bit of the remake of Patrick with our friend Sharni Vincent.
Your future wife.
Future wife. Yeah. In that movie, like in this, she puts forward the idea that the doctor in charge is being cruel to the patient. and that this shouldn't be allowed. That would be more than enough to fire her or the cameraman.
Yeah.
And yet they don't, because of course that would cut the movie in half.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's similarity between the Patrick remake and this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Both good movies, both worth watching.
Yes, and I thought this movie was going on a very steady little pace, and then at the end it really, boom, goes really fast. So it's a nice payoff.
It is. It's well worth seeing. Our next movie, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, 2013 movie directed by the star, Ben Stiller, written by Steve Conrad, based on a wonderful, very short story by the great American humorist James Thurber. And the movie was made back in the 40s, I believe it was, with Danny Kaye, the Walter Mitty character.
Right.
And the wonderful short story, which nobody has done, not sticking really close to it, because it shouldn't be a full-length movie, it should be a short. I think a cartoon would do it best. Walter Mitty is a little mouse of a man who, in the story, he's shopping with his wife, and he's just basically, yes, dear, I'll wait here, and she's ordering him around, yes, dear, I'll wait here. But in his mind, he has this rich fantasy life where he's a renowned neurosurgeon, he's an experimental pilot, he's this, he's that. So they've taken all these elements from the short story, and Ben Stiller and the scriptwriter have made this into a feature movie where the Walter Mitty character, played by Stiller, is just a little mouse of a man. And he's constantly going off into daydreams and having little exciting fantasies. What he would like to say to the snarky new boss who's constantly humiliating him, but of course never would dare to say.
Right.
And it's just his growth as a human being. He's forced into a situation. He's in charge of
negatives.
Old negatives for Life magazine.
Yeah. And they're closing the doors on Life, and they're looking for their last issues.
The last cover shot. And
one of his
photographer,
idols. Yeah,
played by Sean Penn.
And he can't find it.
Yes, it seems to be lost. He's got all the other negatives from that role, but that one picture is missing. So he is forced to travel the world very quickly by any means necessary and try and find this. And at the same time, he's just starting to come out of his shell because a woman at the office, played by Kristen Wiig, has caught his eye, and he's finally sort of manning up.
Yeah.
Really, for the first time in his life, he's acting like a grown-up and growing a pair and, living life. At first I thought, this is going to be awful. It's going to be one of those Ben Stiller, everything's so cute, and isn't that cute? But in fact, I found it very good, and by the end of the movie, I even found it touching. I thought it was quite a heartfelt little story.
I'd heard that it wasn't doing well at the box office and that it was not getting good reviews.
Right.
When I finally saw it, I was surprised that, I enjoyed it as well.
Good.
I thought it was very touching as well.
Yeah.
And I thought there was nothing wrong with this movie.
It's maybe a little too thoughtful. And, definitely stretching it to call it horror, but it is like a fantasy movie. It has all those elements. In the first half, it's him fantasizing all these roles for himself. In the second half of the movie,
he's actually
living them. He is.
Yeah.
This little mouse is actually.
Yeah, he does have a few talents that he's discovered.
Oh, yeah. He's a master skateboarder, which was pretty weird.
Yeah.
And also, of course, that complete anathema to the original story, in which Walter Mitty was completely and utterly unremarkable.
Right.
In this movie, he's like a world champion skateboarder, but
nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Yeah, he's never shown anybody.
So that's just kind of silly.
Yeah, but it comes in handy.
It comes in, well, of course, that's your Deus Ex Machina. That's the machine that comes down from heaven, sent by the gods to wrap up all the problems at the end of the play.
Yeah. I love the pace of the movie, and I love him going to Iceland and a number of other remote areas.
Yeah, and the people there are just hilarious.
And then when he finally meets up with the photographer, that's so well done. It's just underplayed,
Yeah. The lesson that Sean Penn, who's like the greatest photographer who's ever lived. He's like a Zen master of photography. And he's there to film the ultra rare, not just rare, but elusive, the ultra-elusive snow leopard that hangs on the edges of the Himalayan mountains. And Ben Stiller, even the Sherpas won't come with him. So, this little office clerk manages to make his way to find Sean Penn on the edge of a Himalayan mountain. And they're there and they're watching. And there's one of the elusive snow leopards across on the next mountain. And instead of taking the picture, Sean Penn says, "Sometimes I just want to keep that for myself." And I just think that's so beautiful. He doesn't exploit the moment.
Yeah.
It's such a wonderful moment. And it will pass, and there's no payoff for him except his own payoff. And I just thought, that's a tremendous point to be made. We don't always have to be thinking in terms of a profit at the end.
Right.
The profit is in us,
right.
To ourselves.
I keep saying to my son, it's like, I don't go bike riding by myself, or I don't go on trips by myself, because I like to enjoy them with someone else. Because I can't say, hey, look, isn't that wonderful?
We do enough stuff on our own, don't we?
Yeah, Sean Penn character just is quite willing to look at something, enjoy it for himself, and he doesn't have to say, oh, look at this.
Yeah, he doesn't even have to take his photograph, even though that's why he's there, to take a photograph. Yeah, beautiful bit of philosophizing. You don't often get a nice message like that coming across in what is really a silly comedy. This movie rises above that.
It's not a silly comedy. It's not even really a comedy. But
it starts off as being pretty damn silly because his fantasies are ridiculous.
Yeah.
He sees this new girl at the office and she says something like, geez, I wish I had a cold drink. And the next thing you know, him with a great, bare, hairy, muscular chest is bursting through the walls with a soda for her. I am, Thor, your man of action. And it's just rubbish. But by the end of the movie, he's realized that he can have a bit of that character for real in his life.
Yeah.
A very enjoyable movie. And maybe for us, it's just nice to get away from the horror. I see so many more horror movies than regular shows.
But just the cinematography in this thing is really, really worth the watch.
Oh, yeah. It's a gorgeous movie.
I love it when you can go to a remote place and just let it speak for itself. Credits
at the end, there's a huge number of Icelandic type names, Sigmund's daughter and stuff like that. They really did travel the world. They were in...
I wonder if they went to Nepal.
They went somewhere close to those mountains because they're really there, and then they see those Sherpa names. And
they played football with the natives.
Yeah.
With what was it? The ball was made out of skin of something.
Bladder
or something.
Yeah, it's nicely done. So who else is in it? We got Adam Scott plays Ted Hendricks, he's the new boss put in charge of shutting down Life, just turning it purely into an online digital entity.
Yeah.
I mean, Adam Scott usually plays a swine, but he really plays that swine well.
Yeah.
John Daly plays Tim Naughton, and he's just like another office drone. This guy is such a weed that I think he sort of thinks Walter is kind of cool. He's that much worse off. Shirley MacLaine is in it, playing Walter's mother. I haven't seen her in a while.
Yeah, she did a good job.
She does an okay job. I'm not a big Shirley MacLaine fan. Maybe in another lifetime. But I usually find her quite annoying. But in this, she
doesn't go overboard. Or anything.
She doesn't. She's not allowed to.
Yeah.
And Patton Oswalt plays until very near the end. He plays Todd Marr, who is just a voice on Walter's phone. He signs up with an online dating service, and
that's right.
And Patton Oswalt plays the guy who is like his helper on the online dating.
And he wants to...
And he's wonderful.
He wants to help him make a nice page for himself.
Because Walter hasn't got anything to say.
Yeah, he's like, what have you done?
Nothing.
Where
have you been? Nowhere.
Yeah, and then he continually phones up Walter Mitty, wherever he is, and he says, what are you doing now? Well, I'm on the Himalayas now. And he says, well, I'm going to put that on the page.
This will look great. This is great for the dating page.
Yeah.
and it's so nice because...
they meet up at the end.
At the end, they do meet, and of course, Patton Oswalt is such a an odd-looking little man that he is like a fairy godmother.
Well, he's getting around these days because now he was in Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He's a minor character in that.
He works constantly.
Yeah, I see him all over the place.
Super nerd. He's one of the super nerds, like Brian Posehn and a lot of the.
But he's becoming a superstar now.
Mm-hmm. He's very good. He's made a couple of really good movies. He made one about a super football fan and the troubles, and it was not a comedy. Maybe it was just called Fan or Super Fan. Very good movie. Anyway, find it by looking up Patton Oswalt on IMDb. Excellent movie. The guy can act, as most good comedians can do. Mm-hmm. He's also got acting chops, because you got to have timing. You have to be able to fake sincerity if you're going to tell jokes well.
Yeah.
And then, of course, as we mentioned, Sean Penn plays Sean O'Connell, who is the absolute polar opposite of Ben Stiller's Walter Mitty character.
At the beginning, anyway.
At the beginning, yes, and by the end...
He's rubbed off a bit on him.
Well, and he's not just rubbed off, but the mutual admiration, because Walter can do things, hold down a life and a job and so on, that Sean Penn's character simply can't do, but wishes that he had more of that. That's sort of stick-to-itiveness. But he's never been able to build a life for himself because he's rootless.
And it's funny because these guys have never met in person.
No, and yet they're fans of each other.
And they have a good relationship on the phone.
Yeah.
Because they talk to one another.
Yeah.
And when he tells them, I'm missing that negative, he's going, oh, it was a great shot.
Yeah.
It's too bad you didn't see it.
Yeah.
I put it in, there's a whole thing with the negative.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's the purpose of the movie.
And it's beautifully told. I'm not going to go into it because that's the charm of this movie.
Yeah, don't want to give it away.
The story and the negative is a story in itself.
A lot of positives about the negative.
Yeah.
Okay, so one more movie for this episode, folks. This is an oldie. We try to look back at a horror movie from the olden days. This goes all the way back to 1989.
The ancient times.
Old timers, yeah. It's called Parents. It was directed by the well-known actor Bob Balaban. We mentioned Seinfeld last episode. He was the producer at NBC who's in charge of Jerry's show, whether it went on or not.
Oh, was okay.
He falls in love with Elaine, and Elaine rejects him.
Right.
So he quits NBC, and that's the end of the Jerry show.
That's right. Right.
But he's very funny in that. I don't believe that we ever see him in this movie, but he's just directing. It stars Brian Madorsky as Michael Lemley. Lemley being, of course, the name of the producer of so many of the classic Universal horror movies from the 30s. So that's the reference there. So you have Michael Lemley, the little boy. The dad, Nick, is played by Randy Quaid, and the mom, Lily, is played by Mary Beth Hurt. And the only other character of note is Sandy Dennis, playing Mildew, who is the school counselor. She's a social worker.
Yeah.
She describes herself. She's not a psychiatrist or anything. Now, this is set in I would say the late 50s. This is like Eisenhower. So this is the 50s. Kennedy was the 60s, right? Kennedy came in 60.
Yeah.
This is pre-Kennedy. This is like really when America was still like this commie-hating, insular, dull black and white world. Not that the movie's in black and white, but that's the way I've heard people describe America in the 50s, waiting for color.
No, I consider this 50s on the verge of the 60s because they've got the modern-looking furniture.
Yeah.
Everything is sort of ultra-modernized the way we figured the future was going to be, kind of like stuff.
A little bit, yeah. Well, I mean, they got a lot of vinyl crap in their house. And
it's beautiful stuff.
Oh, God.
It reminds me of my parents.
Yeah,
it really does.
The plot of the movie has to do with young Michael, Brian Madorsky's character, and the family moves around a lot. And here he is in his new school, and he does find a friend, a girl who's a little older than he is. Yeah,
either that or she's sprouted.
Yeah, well, that happens too.
Yeah.
But she's at least a year.
Foot taller than him.
They say early on she's at least a year older than he is. She got held back or something like that in one class. So young Michael has got this little girlfriend, but the big problem is that he doesn't trust his parents. He thinks that his parents may have some evil, dark secret, and it's sort of him hunting for this secret, and his parents.
His parents are the most peculiar people.
Yeah, and yet on the outside they are pure 1950s conformist squares.
Yeah.
You know,
and
the
Randy,
dad comes home and has a martini. They're constantly barbecuing.
Yeah.
It's meat and more meat.
Yeah.
Now the reason that they're eating so much meat
that's a mystery.
It's a monstrous secret.
The pacing of this movie
Yeah.
is so, I don't know how you would call it. It's like this mundane to it.
But it's like watching Leave It to Beaver.
Yeah.
They are the family from Leave It to Beaver.
Yeah.
You know, the mum wears pearls while she's chopping meat in the kitchen.
Yeah, and he's got a tie on constantly.
Yeah.
And he comes home and there's a drink waiting for him. You know?
And the little boy, he's such a tiny little kid. And he just refuses to eat any of this meat.
Yeah.
He's just suspicious of it.
And it's,
as well he should be.
And constantly being sent hungry to his room.
Yeah.
Now, Randy...
The dad has no patience for him. The mom loves her little boy, but the dad doesn't even think he's his.
Yeah, but it's a weird relationship because sometimes he's very caring and other times he wants to throw him across the room. And some of the expressions. Now, Randy Quaid and Dennis Quaid are brothers.
Yes.
And they don't look very much like one another, but there was one expression that came across his face that looked so much like his brother.
Right.
I just went, whoa!
Yeah.
He's like, he can do it. They are brothers because you can see it right there in that one shot.
Yeah, Randy Quaid, the older brother, is so much goofier looking.
Yeah,
Dennis Quaid is very, at least when he was a young man, he was very, very handsome young dog. A leading man, where Randy Quaid, never a leading man. And
although he has one of the leads in this show.
Yeah, no, but I mean he's not a romantic.
Yeah.
He's never a romantic hero because he's just too damn goofy.
Yeah.
He's much better suited playing the hillbilly cousin to the wife in the vacation movies, the National Lampoon Vacation movies. Because he looks like a corn-shucking, barefooted inbred.
And the problems that this kid's having at home that he brings to school with him, and the woman at school...
Sandy Dennis's character?
Yeah, she figures that he's being abused.
Yes, she thinks there's something wrong.
So she's trying to get closer to the mom and dad so that she can figure out what's going on here.
She talks to the mom and really quizzes her, and the mom absolutely won't answer any of her questions. Just deflects.
Doesn't even deflect. She just sits there and smiles.
There's something I don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
But see, again, 1950s, people couldn't interfere in your home life the way they could even into the 60s with social workers.
Yeah.
Even though the Sandy Dennis character is a social worker, she has no power.
Yeah.
No power at all. And that changed as the 60s progressed. People became more, in a lot of ways, intellectually freer. In a lot of ways, I think the government gained more power. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I personally think it's a good thing that children should have an advocate with power.
Exactly.
Which is what Sandy Dennis is trying to be in this, but she can't.
Yeah.
She simply can't.
So she's trying to get friendly with the parents in order to figure out, is he being abused?
What's the problem?
Yeah,
what's the problem?
And that's to her detriment because she shouldn't have done it.
No. These parents are monsters. I saw this movie when I was writing for an entertainment magazine. I was an editor on an entertainment magazine in the late 80s, Plus magazine, although we used to call it Puss magazine. And I enjoyed this movie at the time, and I enjoyed watching it again so we could talk about it today. I really recommend it. It's very, very funny black comedy.
I just came across it.
That's right. You wanted to watch it this time.
I came across it from reading up on another movie. They mentioned this movie, Parents.
Right.
They said it was an oddball black comedy.
Yeah.
And I went, okay, I want to see comedy horror. Right. I'm sick and tired of realistic footage. I wanted a change up.
Yeah.
Which is where the stuff...
No found footage in this movie.
Where the stuff came from and the parents and stuff like that. I wanted some comedy horror.
Vamp, which we'll be talking about soon.
Yeah. It's a nice change up, and I was really pleased because it's such an odd movie.
Yes.
It's not like the stuff at all.
No.
It's really low key.
Right. And even though it's probably not a very big budget movie, it's shot almost entirely in the kids' school and the family house, which is like one of these half level ranch type houses.
Yeah, split level.
Split level, that's it. Yeah.
We used to live in a split level.
Yeah. No, they were very common.
I mean, it's just cheaping out and not making two levels.
Yeah. Well, yes, and it's not leveling the ground. It's just, going with the flow.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look back. The Sacrament, 2013 movie written and directed by Ty West. I would recommend that above just about any other movie I've seen recently. Really liked it.
Me, I thought it was too much like a documentary.
Yeah.
But I did enjoy it. It's actually a very meaningful movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The upper footage, I obviously liked it more than you did.
Nah, I couldn't be bothered with this. I had no sympathy for these kids. And the way it was shot, it was just too out of focus.
Really,
not enough things happening on screen.
I agree, it's obnoxious.
And a lot of swearing and ridiculous dialogue going back and forth. I mean, just petty stuff, and it drove me nuts.
Rather repetitive. The Quiet Ones.
You can go first.
I'd recommend it. I liked it. I thought it was a good movie.
Yeah, I just watched it actually this morning, and
right.
It is a very good movie. I didn't know where it was going to go to, but I kind of suspected where it was going to go to.
Yes,
it does have a big bang at the end.
And obviously, we both really liked The Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering what you were going to think about that.
We're both surprised by how much we liked it.
I was also really surprised to find it on our list.
Right. Yeah, why not?
So I was pleased because I liked the movie, and you actually put it on our list.
Well, I watched it with Amazing Trixie, so I thought, what the hell, I'm not going to waste a movie that I watched.
Well, that's it. I watched it out of pure joy.
Good.
And without thinking that we'll ever review it.
Right. And then, obviously, we both liked Parents.
Yeah. It's an odd movie.
Yeah.
And I can see some people not liking this type of movie.
Right.
But I thought it was odd enough that I liked it. It's not a real ha-ha comedy.
No, very dark.
It's more of a peculiar comedy.
Okay. All right, folks. So we'll be back next week. We'll be talking about the new Paranormal Activity movie, the marked ones.
The ho-ho one?
Oh, horrible. And some old and some new, some real weird old stuff next episode, too. So until then,